Ms. Dean. At this time, we'll recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Issa, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been a lot of good things said about our ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz. So let me just go through a few things, and I think I'll start with Mr. Schneider probably primarily. Have we ever had year-over-year reductions in the number of employees at the UN the way we have in the last year?
Not in the way we have the past year. This is unprecedented.
Is it also unprecedented to lower disproportionately the amount of people who are what you might call permanent employees, people who had roles in the UN but then somehow continue to be on the payroll for years following?
They've set records both in terms of reductions in staff and in terms of the size of the approved regular budget, both in terms of percentage and in terms of dollar amounts from last year to this year.
Now, isn't it true that this is really just the tip of the iceberg, that there is considerably more to do, that in fact the bloated nature of the you never stop working for the UN when you've worked for the UN, including travel rights, educational benefits. It's not just a basic paycheck, is it?
I believe you're referring to compensation of UN employees.
Correct.
According to the International Civil Service Commission, which is the organization that sets UN salaries, the UN employees in New York earn about 17% more than equivalent U.S. civil servants in New York, but the comparison is a little bit off. If you look at the comparison between New York and Washington, D.C., it's about 29% higher, and that extends the higher up the pole in terms of seniority you go inside the UN system.
And since we're dealing with the bloated pay for a moment, the individuals that typically enjoy that, are they the best and the brightest from the best universities? Are these Cambridge graduates? Are these PhDs? Or are a major portion of them simply people from developing countries who knew somebody to be assigned to the UN and then stay?
I think it's a little bit of both. Oftentimes you'll have people even from whatever the country. So the UN system allocates staffing loosely based off of the level of contributions to the organization, and also based on
I've been at peacekeeping missions.
Yeah.
I see no evidence that they're loosely connected to those ratios.
Well, the U.S. is historically underrepresented inside the UN system, but China is as well right now because of that ratio in terms of contributions and population. And so China's increase in UN staffing has been increasing over the past 25 years as its contributions have been increasing. But that's a concern because unlike, say, the United States or the UK or other countries, China exerts enormous amount of influence over the actions and the independence of its citizens. To give you an example, the former head of Interpol was a Chinese citizen. He did something that upset the Chinese Communist Party. He went back to Beijing and was arrested. We've never heard from him again. He was sentenced to multiple, I think multiple decades in prison on charges of bribery. But the real offense was that he did something that China didn't want. So the threat of Chinese retribution on individuals and family members is stark inside the UN system, and it allows China to influence what their staff do inside the system in ways that we wouldn't do and shouldn't do.
And I will say that having been to Switzerland and looked at a lot of the other both scientific and health organizations, your statement about the ratio may be true in some areas. It certainly isn't true in Switzerland, where it looks like little Hong Kong to me, just as an observer. Let me switch subjects. NGO monitoring. A lot has been said on both sides of the aisle here about the tragedy that didn't need to happen in Gaza, where literally UN employees were active members, in some cases leaders, of Hamas. The reality is that one of the points that the Ambassador Waltz is dealing with is the claim that under European law, these NGOs that operate out of there, no matter who their employees, have no requirement to deliver any transparency for their vetting. When the ambassador continues to hold back some portion of our annual dues, although they have been paying at about the rate that it accrues. Isn't that part of the leverage of what he's trying to achieve, a level of accountability for these NGOs, not in fact employing the worst of the worst when they should be helping the country that they're in?
Yeah, there's not a circumstance under which one single U.S. dollar should be going to an NGO that employs members of terrorist organizations as designated by the United States. And we should be doing everything in our power to make sure that the vetting procedures are tied explicitly to U.S. contributions, both to the NGOs and to international organizations.
Thank you. And my time has expired. I didn't give anyone else a chance, but I saw enough heads bobbing that I think this was an area of unity for the committee today. I thank the chairman and yield back.
Congressman Darrell Issa used the hearing to spotlight what Republicans described as deep problems inside the United Nations, from oversized salaries and bureaucracy to growing Chinese influence within the organization. Witnesses testified that recent reductions in UN staffing and budgets were historically large, but lawmakers argued the reforms still do not go far enough. The hearing also focused heavily on concerns that UN employees and NGOs operating in Gaza were not being properly vetted, with lawmakers warning that American taxpayer dollars should never reach organizations linked to Hamas or other terrorist groups. Experts described China's expanding presence inside the UN as another major concern, arguing that Beijing exerts political pressure on its citizens working in international institutions. Throughout the exchange, committee members pushed for tougher oversight, more transparency, and stricter conditions tied to U.S. funding. By the end of the hearing, lawmakers from both parties appeared to agree that international organizations receiving American support must face far greater accountability.